You're listening to The Performance-Driven Warehouse, turning complex operational data into measurable performance. The modern warehouse looks nothing like what it did 20, 10, or even 5 years ago. Thanks to the speed of the markets, tech advances, and changing business processes, the warehouse itself has evolved into a complex network of people, systems, and automation. Balancing all of this to keep on top of volatility, disruptions, and even new opportunities is kind of an art form. Successful warehouse management depends on how well you can see everything that's happening across your network. And that network is powered by data. But what good is all the data in the world if it's not under the right lens and connected in a strategic way so you can understand and act on it? In order to gain the visibility to manage cost, performance, and capacity in real time, you need to unify your data. That's what today's warehouse performance management is all about. Hello, I'm Dan Keto. Welcome to the Performance-Driven Warehouse, where industry experts and operators share how they've transformed data complexity into operational clarity. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Easy Metrics podcast, where we dive deep into how warehouse operations leaders turn complex data into operational intelligence and measurable performance gains. Today, we're joined by our guest, Lora Cecere. Lora is the founder of Supply Chain Insights, where she partners with supply chain leaders to help their teams reach higher levels of performance and operational excellence. Her firm is known for pushing the category forward with independent, thought-leading research built for early adopters looking for first-mover advantage. She brings more than 35 years of supply chain experience across analysis, software, and operations. Her background includes 9 years as an industry analyst at Gartner, AMR Research, and Altimeter Group. Before launching Supply Chain Insights, she spent 15 years helping build supply chain software at Managistics and Descartes Systems Group, and 20 years as a supply chain practitioner with companies including Procter & Gamble, Kraft, General Foods, Clorox, and Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream. In today's conversation, we're going to dive deeper into warehouse performance management and how companies can use cost-to-serve information to transform their businesses. Lora, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. Easy Metrics has been working with you for a while and really have valued the relationship and expertise that you bring to our organization. So, Lora, the first question I'd like to ask you is, regarding cost to serve, cost to serve can be a bit of a broad term, ranging from the macro to the micro. So how do you define cost to serve in the warehouse?
So as we look at cost to serve in the warehouse and we look at labor management and we look at automation, the question is, what is the input to drive an order for a customer? And I think the real value of cost to serve is in navigating mix variability. So if we look at the warehouse itself, it's sort of a black hole. Perpetual inventory signals are taking 6 to 8 hours to roll up. And in the research that I did with you, we found a major gap between what was happening in the warehouse and the visibility by the leadership team, either in logistics or supply chain. And I think that, with e-commerce, with returns, with shifts in mix, we can't afford that black hole.
So when I look at cost to serve, there's the value of process optimization. So it's costing me $1 to do this. It probably shouldn't be doing that. I'll bring in some engineers, we'll change some things, and it's now 80 cents. So there's a big value as, cost to serve is that great measurement to really drive your success. Like I'm trying to bring my cost down. Everyone's trying to do that. I want to ask an intangible value of cost to serve, which we're really exploring a lot, which is price discovery. Because now we're dealing with such complex freight mix and omni-channel delivery. You deal with extreme, I think we've gone through the shoe example before, right? There's a lot of costs in there that really can impact your bottom line. And by understanding that, it helps you better price your services. And so I'm curious your perspective of leveraging cost to serve for price discovery in your products and services as a distributor.
Well, I think about it as price management. Anybody that is in the distribution business knows that a customer is not a customer, that some customers are easier to serve than other customers. Maybe they have fewer order changes, fewer returns, more predictable mix, volume that isn't as lumpy. But the characteristic of that customer has a unique value proposition. Now, cost to serve helps me in two ways. It helps me with how can I be more efficient with that characteristic, but at the same time, it helps me with how do I best price and serve that customer. And if I'm a leader in the industry, I want to coach that customer about how they can drive better value. A lot of times people don't know that they're getting the level of returns that they are, or the level of damage, or that they have the issues with so many order changes. And so helping with benchmark data to push back around the definition of that customer relationship in top to top meetings, I think is essential. But foundational is let's just take the characteristic of that customer and let's make our warehouse as effective as possible in terms of labor scheduling, warehouse design, and thinking about forward-looking demand.
Thank you. One of the things that we're seeing now from customers is this desire for a more granular understanding of cost to serve. Because as you've said, there's so many challenges facing with the growing complexity, growing demands of the distribution center, that the homogenized model of just saying, no, it's $1.50 a case to get it out of the facility no longer works. You have such a high variance between e-commerce, product mix, customer requirements, and so forth, that if you don't have that understanding, you're often overpricing certain customers and underpricing other customers. From that perspective, what is your recommendation of the methods that companies are using to understand that data to get to that cost to serve level?
Well, I think it starts with the promise to a customer. Many times the folks in logistics are not necessarily in concert with the folks in marketing at your customer because the customer is in a single voice. So you may have campaigns or products that were designed that have a theoretical cost, but the actual cost is a lot more. And this could be personalization, it could be damage, it could be the fact that there's under ordering, it could be that I need special conditioning or handling. And so in the rollout of programs, because our life cycles are shorter and we're doing more, excitement in the brands, so to speak, we have a lot of programs that are being pushed by well-intended marketing and sales initiatives that supply chain folks have to execute, and there are typically a lot of surprises. So the first thing is, let's be really clear on expectations on what those programs should be. The second point is helping the customer understand what really happened, right? What really happened in damage and what really happened in order patterns or fulfillment or picking or, perhaps it was, specialized packaging. The third is, how can I better manage the warehouse given unknowns, whether it's the shifting of that particular campaign, maybe it doesn't really happen on date X, but date Y, and maybe it's lumpier, or maybe the forecast was wrong, but giving better visibility to that customer so that the supply chain team can better manage marketing and sales so that there's fewer surprises. Really working as a partner in distribution with the customer, knowing that that customer functionally is not aligned and needs this data to understand execution. As a distributor, you want to be able to do this so that you can better manage cost, have fewer surprises, and better manage your relationships. In this world of greater variability, more uncertainty, the rollout of more campaigns, it becomes more essential that you have this kind of data at a more granular level, both at a UPC level and a warehouse layout level, as well as a customer level, to be able to manage expectations. Those are my thoughts. What are yours?
I'm going to give you some of my thoughts, but I want to actually address a key thing that we've noticed is Amazon's kind of driven this. I mean, what Amazon did is they said, okay, that delivery point to the customer, that's the relationship with the customer. So my customer, their customer clicks and says, okay, I want this product tomorrow and it's going to be there by 10 a.m. That is that touch point in that success point. And so that's built this customer expectation. So Amazon took that delivery model and turned it into this really interesting relationship that has driven so much of their success. Now the rest of the industry is having to adopt to. Historically, going back 20 years or so, distribution was always kind of looked at as that necessary expense to get the product to where it needs to go, but it wasn't looked at as that customer touch point. So the value of distribution in the overall supply chain industry has grown dramatically because, of these competitive factors. So what I'm curious is your perception is these walls are starting to come down between distribution operational success and finance and sales and marketing, because it's becoming such a bigger factor in that business's success. And now with e-commerce, it's a much bigger cost factor historically than it used to be when you're shipping to retail and that sort of thing. And so are you starting to see information flow from the supply chain operation, the distribution operation, to sales and marketing, to finance that better understand the business and bring that information through for proper pricing, but then also for proper management of that customer so your sales aren't throwing things out there you do that are just, crushing your bottom line?
And, it's hard to generalize. We've got B2C, which Amazon redefined, but we also have B2B, which is really working on campaigns for your downstream customers. And in B2B, the customer is not aligned. The supply chain really needs this information in your customer to manage sales and marketing, because most of those folks have never been in a warehouse and don't understand the relative cost of returns or damage or shifts in mix, and they need constant education, because if not, the theoretical cost of that campaign will be very different than the actual, and there will be no way to bridge it other than you're a bad guy or gal and, bad things happen. On a B2C, I agree that Amazon redefined the game, and a lot of people that are in B2C are trying to work on not just prime delivery kind of models, but personalization models. And, that also has higher costs. So whether it's B2B or B2C, what I find is the cost to serve labor management models and the management of mix help us to not make the warehouse a black hole where you've got a lot of loss and cost or a cost center, but really it is a way that you can deliver on the brand promise of reliability and excellence in the delivery, delighting the customer. And the management of that warehouse requires a lot of discipline and cost to serve as part of that.
I agree with you. What we're seeing with a lot of our sophisticated customers is a much higher engagement from the finance side of the business with our model. Because with Easy Metrics, we started in labor management, but we quickly realized that, you can leverage that data into a very comprehensive cost analytics data. And having a strong finance background, we push that envelope very strongly. And so what we're finding now is these financial groups that we talk to, the value, and there's a good value in labor management because you're getting great cost reductions, visibility, and all that. But when you can take that information and leverage it through the organization for better understanding, it really influences decisions much more aligned with how operational delivery is. And so we're starting to see those walls come down, but it's an education process, activity-based costing, cost to serve. For someone like you, it's very intuitive. You've been doing this for a very long time, but it's kind of surprising for a lot of people. It's rocket science, even though there's basic math involved. When you look at all the different factors that flow into that cost to serve, it becomes hyper complex. So as we work through this, we are definitely seeing, though, the finance groups, once they understand, going, wow, this is changing the lens on how they see their business and can drive much more bottom line profitability by aligning price to cost.
And it also depends upon how the client defines customer centricity. If the client defines customer centricity as do whatever the customer wants, irrespective of cost or irrespective of quality, you'll always lose. But if you manage that customer relationship in a data-driven way, where you set clear expectations and you're managing the inputs in the warehouse like you would manage the inputs in a manufacturing plant, then you can have constant communication about what is working and what is not working in a very collaborative way versus an adversarial relationship. If you do not have that kind of structure, you'll always end up with missed expectations and under delivery. And so the definition of customer centricity and being a good partner is that you're data driven and you're disciplined and you're very clear on expectations. And you will find that out the hard way if you don't adopt those kind of practices.
That's excellent advice. So when you look at a cost to serve model,
Mm-hmm.
just again, we're going to stay within the four walls. That's our realm we like to live within. What are all the factors that you would look at, on an activity-based costing build up to that cost to serve? What would be the things that you think are the most critical? And understand that we are evolving so rapidly in supply chain with robotics and automated conveyors, and there's just so much stuff coming in there. What would you say are the most critical things as you're trying to build into these models to look at?
Well, I start with the order. How many order changes are there? The customer's forecast compared to what's actually happening. As you think about space and labor, which is waste. And then you've got to think about unloading and what's required in terms of specialization. Is it slip sheets? Is it pallets? Is it clamp? Does it require cold storage? Is there assembly required? What is the degree of picking? How easy is it to layer pick or pick the each? What's the damage? What's the need for repackaging? What's the need for assembly and personalization? Then when we're into automation and we think about put away or we think about loading, where we typically will have the ATVs or the robotics, how easy is this to move through automation? And then finally, the shipment. Now, one of the biggest factors, I think, in cost to serve is shifts in mix or shifts in handling requirements. A case is not a case, and a pallet's not a pallet, and a unit is not a unit. And so really understanding what it takes to move that product in terms of not only the characteristics of demand, but the characteristics of labor inputs for each of those particular items. And I think where we really can get value is by using this data to help the customer on a B2B relationship understand variability in mix and variability in handling, which is not necessarily obvious to the customer as they're managing the third-party relationship or their own warehouses, because it's sort of a black hole. The data is not visible in most of our systems, and it has latency. And the data that we were doing, over 50% of the data has 24 to 48 hour latency. And so making decisions at the speed of business on, what should we do, I think is important. Does that help?
Oh, it does. I just, when you said a case is not a case and a pallet's not a pallet, we were used to run cross-docking for a very large retailer, and the manager's like, a box is a box. And we're like, no, it's not.
No,
Like,
it's not.
moving hard lines when you're lifting swimming pools with 3 people and you got 20 swimming pools on a container versus 10,000 pairs of shoes, your cases per hour are going to be a little bit different.
Well, the same thing for hang garments and kayaks and right. And, so looking at not only the theoretical labor input, but how hard is that stuff really to move? And when you move it, what is the damage, right? Some things come in and they're really difficult and they're lumpy demand and they don't come off trucks easy. And, so there's a whole scenario around each product that we really have to understand the story. And the data helps us to tell that story in a way that is apolitical and not emotional. And you've got to be able to have a data-driven discussion because a lot of times missed expectations can spin out of control with customers.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's really what, to your point, is the data tells the story. And as long as the data is clean and objective, customers are very willing to work with you. Like,
Right.
I did not realize that this complexity was causing this.
Correct.
And so then you either can adjust price or adjust process to accommodate that. So, excellent information, Laura. Thank you.
And if you don't, you're seen as a whiner. And I think that in supply chain, we'll talk about shifts and mix. And people are like, yeah, okay. But if you take the shifts and mix to a cost factor, or you take the level of damage to a cost handling factor, and if you want to take it up a level, if you can share benchmark data about their competitors and how well they're doing, every supply chain leader is competitive as heck, and they want to outperform their competitors. So if you can say, your opportunity is, then you can have a whole different discussion.
No, excellent advice. And I couldn't agree with you more. What's exciting is because, data now is becoming much more commonplace. The understanding of data is also starting to up level. And so these discussions become much easier than they were 20 years ago when, again, the paradigm was a box is a box. So I think we're at our time here, Laura. Thank you so much for your time today. If people want to check out your information, what's the best way for them to find you?
So my website is supplychaininsights.com, and I write regularly on LinkedIn. And we just did an exciting research study with you, Dan, that I think is going to be released in a couple of weeks that'll be on your website. And I always love hearing from people that are interested in talking supply chain.
Fantastic. I'll make sure I also have the link to your website and that report and the postscript of this podcast. So, Laura, again, thank you for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Subscribe to the Performance Driven Warehouse wherever you get your podcasts. For proven data strategies and guidance on warehouse performance management, visit easymetrics.com. Until next time, let data lead your performance and never stop improving. Keep turning complexity into performance.